Hello students, welcome to yet another data processing class for SS2 and SS3. My name is Chukwuma C. The topic we are going to discuss today is parallel and distributed databases. Parallel and distributed databases. So by the end of this lesson, you're expected to be able to explain the term parallel and distributed databases, describe homogeneous and heterogeneous distributed database, state at least 2 benefits of parallel processing, list the features of parallel and distributed databases. Okay, let's look at parallel database. Parallel database. Before we talk about parallel database, I want to believe that you still remember what a database is, as you have studied in your previous classes. That is SS1 for the SS2s, then SS3s, SS1, SS2. Now, a database is a collection of related information that is designed in such a way that computer can easily retrieve data from it. Collection of related information or collection of related data. That's what a database is. Okay? Alright, so here we are talking about parallel database. So parallel database is a database system designed to improve data processing and input-output speeds by using multiple processors and disks in parallel. I said it's a database system designed to improve data processing and input-output speeds by using multiple CPUs. When I mention CPUs, I'm talking about processors. Okay? Multiple CPUs and disks in parallel. Parallel processing divides a larger task into many smaller tasks and executes the smaller tasks concurrently on several or separate machines. Okay? Now let me bring it to the things we've seen before. How many of you have been to a banking hall? Either for maybe to withdraw money or to pay in, or any other transaction that you want to carry out. Okay? You have been there? You've been there? Alright. Okay. Now sometimes when you go to the banking hall, you discover that you have so many persons lined up either to pay in money or to withdraw money. Some will even come maybe to collect ATM card. Some will go there to make some reports or inquiry. Now let's use those at the counter, for example, those who want to withdraw money and those who want to pay in money. Now, assuming you have about 100 clients in a banking hall that want to withdraw money or pay in money, and you have only one person, only one cashier attending to the 100 persons, you discover that it will be slow. Okay? It will be slow. But if the bank decides to bring in 3 more persons to do the same job, remember this is the same job now, but the bank will now decide to bring in 3 more persons, 3 more cashiers to attend to these persons, you discover that there will be a kind of speed up in the transaction process. Do you understand? There will be increase in the transaction. The speed will now increase. Remember here we said to improve data processing and input-output speeds by using multiple CPUs and disks in parallel. So when you have 3 more cashiers now sitting to attend to the same customers, you see that the same job is divided. This larger task now has been divided into several other smaller tasks, because each of the cashiers now will have a smaller group of people to attend to, unlike the previous person that had hundreds of persons to attend to. So in parallel database, this is what parallel processing tends to achieve, to speed up the rate of data processing, to speed up the outputs of data processing. So any database system that is designed to improve data processing and input-output speeds by using multiple CPUs concurrently at the same time is called parallel database. I hope that is clear. Okay, let me use another one that will be very close to us. Whenever you are returning back to school, the teachers or the staff will be here to check you in. Assuming 1 teacher or 2 teachers or 2 staff will be at the checking in point to attend to all the students in the school, how do you think the whole thing will look like? Do you get what I'm saying now? Imagine the whole school, only 2 staff or 2 teachers checking you in as you are returning back to school. It will be very slow. So, but the school will now divide it, JS1, JS2, JS3. Even in JS1, JS2, JS3, they will still have 2 or 3 teachers doing the same job. So in parallel database system, it is designed to improve the speed of data processing by dividing a larger task into smaller tasks, so that separate processors and disks will handle them concurrently. Okay, they will run on separate machines concurrently. So that is the parallel database for you. Okay, I hope you have that now. Alright, let's look at the benefits of parallel database. Like I've said before, one of the benefits is that it improves performance. Improved performance. So when you have more CPUs available to an application, higher speed up and scale up can be attained. With more CPUs available to an application, higher speed up and scale up can be attained. What do we mean by speed up and scale up? When we talk about scale up, this is a factor that explains how much work that can be done in the same time period by a larger system. Do you get that now? A larger system. Factor that explains how much work that can be done in the same time period by a larger system. When you talk about speed up, you're talking about the extent to which more hardware can perform the same tasks in less time than the original system. Remember, like the example I gave you, the original system is where a teacher is attending to everybody in the school, checking everybody in. Now, when you bring in more teachers, okay, how much work can this number of teachers achieve in lesser time than the original system? Okay? Alright, the next one is improved availability of data. Improved availability of data. So in this case now, data can be copied to multiple locations to improve the availability of data to users. For example, sometimes when you come back, there may be one document or the other that the parents will sign. So if we put them in a location, you discover that this document will not be available to people or to your parents to sign them. So we still distribute them so that it will be available to your parents to sign. So one of the benefits of parallel database is that it will improve the availability of data. And it will not make a failure at one node not to affect the entire system. Okay? So I'm using that of checking in so that you understand what happens in the database system. So when you have multiple CPUs attending to the same task, so if there is a failure in one of the CPUs or in one of the machines, it will not affect the whole system like when the whole information is centralized, because we also have centralized database. So when you now distribute the tasks, it will not affect the entire system so much if there is a failure. Okay? The next one is more users. So with parallel database architecture, thousands of users can access an application via separate processors. Okay? The same application, many users, since you have split them up in different machines, so many users can have access to an application. Okay? The next one is improved reliability. Reliability of database is improved with completeness and accuracy and availability of data. Do you get that? All right. Improve reliability. So when there is availability of data, when the users can have access to the application via separate processors, it will improve the reliability of the database. Okay, now let's look at some of the characteristics of parallel database system. Some of the things, some of the features that are peculiar to parallel database system. One is that each processor in a system can perform tasks concurrently. Okay, each processor. Remember I told you that in a banking hall, when you split the task, this cashier is paying customers, this cashier is paying customers. The same task, each of them, they are doing it concurrently. They are running at the same time. Okay? Then the next one is resource sharing. In parallel database system, there is this tendency that disks and memories can be shared among the users. Then tasks may need to be synchronized. Tasks may need to be synchronized, or tasks are synchronized. They are unified. The tasks are unified so that they can run at the same time. That is what we mean by that. Okay? Let's look at now distributed database. Remember, we've just treated parallel database. Now let's look at distributed database. So in distributed database system, data is allowed to reside at severally widely separated sites. Do you get that? Data is allowed to reside at severally widely separated sites. This is a database in which data is stored across different physical locations. What do we mean by that? Now let me give you an instance. In distributed database, you discover that there are different locations. There are smaller databases in each of the locations. For example, in our school is owned by Masters Vessel Ministry. Okay? The Masters Vessel Ministry can have a database, and in this database there is also, or there will be another database in the secondary section, there will be another database in the primary section, there will be another database in the ministry itself, but all these databases are interlinked. They form a network to now stand as a single database of the ministry. Now you now discover that the sites are distributed here and there. They are scattered. The secondary, the primary, that of the ministry. But all of them will still come together to form one single database of the ministry. And each of these sites will have its data stored in that location. Okay? So a distributed database can also be described as a collection of multiple interconnected databases which are spread physically across various locations that communicate via a computer network. Get that, is very important. So that means when you have a distributed database, there are smaller databases that will integrate to make up that single database. And these smaller databases will now work together via a network. Okay? They are connected through a network so that they can now stand as a single database. Okay? Distributed database can be homogeneous or heterogeneous. When we say that distributed database is homogeneous, it means that all the physical locations have the same hardware and run the same operating system and the same DBMS. I want to believe that my students will not be asking me what DBMS means. Will you do that? Okay, in case you have forgotten, DBMS stands for Database Management System. And this is the software that is used to manipulate the database. I hope you've remembered that now. Alright, so when we have a distributed database where all the physical locations have the same hardware configuration, run on the same operating system, and have the same type of DBMS, we say that such distributed database is a homogeneous distributed database. I said this word, homogeneous distributed database. Alright, the next one is heterogeneous distributed database. In this type of distributed database, the hardware, the operating system, or the database applications, that is the DBMS, differ at each location. That means location A has a different operating system, a different hardware, and different database application. Location B we also have different one, but still all of them are integrated into one database. Do you understand? So that is the difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous distributed database systems. Homogeneous, H-O-M-O-G-E-N-O-U-S. Then heterogeneous, H-E-T-E-R-O-G-E-N-E-O-U-S. Homogeneous distributed database and heterogeneous distributed database. Don't forget that. Okay? Now let's look at the characteristics of distributed database. Characteristics of distributed database. One of the characteristics is that the processors in the sites are linked via a network. I've said it before. Remember I said when you have location A, the database there will have its processors. Location B will have its processors. Location C, the same thing. Then all of them are linked. All of them are connected together through a network. So the processors in the sites or in the locations are linked via a network. Then the next one is that the databases in that network are logically interrelated with each other. Okay? Now you can bring in two different organizations whose activities are not related, and you now say the two databases are forming distributed database. No. This database, remember when we define database, we said it is a collection of logically related information or data. So one of the characteristics of the distributed database is that they are logically, the databases in that network are logically interrelated with each other. I hope you have that now. Now the next thing is that data is stored physically across multiple sites and independently managed. What do we mean by that? Remember I told you that the sites are distributed. They are located in different areas or in different places. Okay? But in each of these sites, the data stored there must be there. Each of them, none of them will rely on data stored in another site to function. Location A will have its data stored for it there. Location B will have its data stored for it there. And they are also independently managed. These are some of the characteristics of distributed database. Okay, let's look at the advantages of distributed database. Advantages of distributed database. More reliable, especially when failure occurs. Distributed database is more reliable, especially when failure occurs. Unlike the centralized database, because we have several sites and each of them can be managed independently. So when there is a failure in any of the sites, though it may slow down the process in that database, but it will not stop it from working. Now the next one is better response. B-E-T-T-E-R. Better response to users' request. So one of the advantages of distributed database is that it grants the users better response to their request. Why? Because the request can be made from local data. When you request for anything, since each of the sites has its data stored physically there, your request can be made from that your local place. Unlike in centralized systems where all queries have to pass via the central computer for processing, thereby increasing the response time. Check, for instance, if the database is not distributed across different sites, they are centralized. You know, when they are centralized, their function will not depend on one computer. So every request goes to that computer. Every request goes to that computer. You know, some of you that are good in complaining, when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 of you complaining to one person, imagine how that your request will be met by one person. So distributed database tends to overcome this kind of problem. So it will increase the response time when a user requests for something. Then the next one is capable of modular development. What do we mean by that? Modular development. It is very easy to expand the database, to add another site, to add another location, to store data in another location without interrupting the entire system. But if it should be in a centralized database, before you do any expansion, the whole system will be interrupted. So in distributed database system, it can easily be expanded without much interruption to the entire system. The next one is lower communication cost. Lower communication cost. So people that use, the users, the admins, especially the admins, it helps them in communication. The communication cost will be reduced. So these are some of the advantages of a distributed database. So far we've looked at the parallel database, what it is. We said that the key goal of parallel database is to improve the rate of speed up and scale up, to improve speed, to make sure that the tasks are divided so that they will run concurrently on multiple machines. Okay, we have also looked at the benefits of parallel database, where we mentioned improved performance, improved availability of data, more users, improved reliability. We have also mentioned the characteristics of parallel database system, where we talked about the processors performing tasks concurrently. Then we have also talked about resource sharing, and the tasks may need to be synchronized. We've discussed distributed database, and we say that in distributed database that there are sites separated widely apart where data can reside. And we also say that these databases that form a distributed database are linked via a network. And we also say that distributed database can either be homogeneous distributed database or heterogeneous distributed database. Homogeneous in the sense that all the physical locations have the same hardware, have the same operating system, and the same DBMS. Then heterogeneous distributed database system, where the sites have different hardware, different operating system, and different DBMS in each location. Then we also looked at the characteristics of distributed database, where the processor sites linked via network. The databases in that network are related with each other logically. Data is stored physically across multiple sites and independently managed. And the advantages here, we mentioned that the distributed database is more reliable, that it has better response to users' requests. We also say that it is capable of modular development and lower communication. Okay, before I leave, I would want you to explain the following: parallel database. I also want you to explain distributed database. I also want you to describe homogeneous distributed database, heterogeneous distributed database. Then state two features of parallel processing. I wish you success as you continue to stay safe. I remain my honorable self, Mr. Chukwuma C. Goodbye.